All right, everybody. Part 4 of the detailing series that I'm putting together, and I'm going to talk about polishers out there. What I mean by that is the machines that you can buy. You can work on your vehicle by hand. I did for many years, but you can only do so much by hand. You really can't do a good paint correction by hand, and what I also noticed was you don't get as good coating of like glazes by hand for sure, and also working by hand a lot more strenuous on yourself, takes a lot longer. So getting into a polisher can be daunting. It took me a long time to work up the courage, but seeing videos of folks online, and I highly recommend that you look them up, go on YouTube, look up people trying out a dual action or a Rotary, and see what they have to say, see how they use it. That's ultimately how I worked up the courage to spend the money to get one and then try it out. And it's one of the best decisions I've ever made. I can't imagine that I never did it from the beginning, but we all start somewhere, right? So, two main machines you got out there, right? You've got the Rotary, and you've got something that's known as a dual action orbital, okay? I will discuss the dual action first, okay? Because that's what I have, right? So I have a Griot's Garage. This is the G9 series. 9 stands for 9mm throw, okay? And what that means is that this backing plate that has the pad on it, it will oscillate 9mm in every direction, right? At the same time that it's spinning. That's why it's called a dual action, okay? So the pad will spin. At the same time, the mechanism that this pad is attached to will also spin. And what that does is it gives you, during the motion, you'll have the pad spinning in one direction, the oscillation coming around spinning in the other direction, and so you get that dual action, and that helps with correcting. You get basically more passes over the same area, which means you don't have to put this down on the paint for as long. And the other thing that's really cool about the dual actions is the way the motors are set up in these things. If you don't hold this thing correctly, it'll stall. Basically, it'll excuse me, it'll stall. It'll stop spinning, right? And so it gives you feedback. Basically, it lets you know, like, hey, dude, you're not holding this thing right. Rotaries won't do that, so that's why they take a little bit more skill and kind of knowing what you're doing, because if you're not holding it right, or you're putting too much pressure, the rotary is going to keep going, and that can cause you to burn through your paint. So that's why a lot of people, from novices to even journeymen, will stick to these because they're very forgiving. The G9 unit, in my opinion, based off of all the research that I've done, is the best unit for the hobbyist. If you're not a pro and you don't need something that, there's some out there like Rupes, Flex. They make these and they cost $300, $400, $500 or more. This thing costs $160. It comes with a lifetime warranty. It's got plenty of power on it. It's got a very good dial on the side, very positive dial, to let you go up from 1 to 6. For most jobs that you're going to do, you don't need to go up to a 6. I basically go 4 to 5 when I'm doing like a correcting. If I'm trying to put a glaze down, I'll be in the 3 range, maybe 4. Just depends on how quickly I want to go. You can even put it down to a 2 to go nice and slow, but it's got plenty of power. It's got a detachable cord, and the cool thing about this design is that the cord actually locks in. You'll hear it kind of semi-snap, so that way it doesn't come out. It comes with a 6-inch backing plate. A lot of people recommend buying the 5-inch backing plate to go with the slightly smaller pad. And the reason why they recommend that is most modern cars, the panels on them are smaller. Excuse me. Using a slightly smaller pad, like a 5.5-inch or 5-inch pad, makes more sense to get some of the the smaller areas. I've left the 6-inch backing pad on it. I use a 6.5-inch pad, because on the Chevelle, my panels are huge. My doors are one big giant solid piece, and they're big. My fenders are big. The quarter panels are a big area. There's not a lot of areas on my vehicle that are very, very narrow. I've got some like the A-pillars and stuff that are a little bit hard to get to, but those aren't very. They're not as scratched up and swirled as much, and so I may in the future get like one of the little micro ones that they sell that have like a little 3-inch backing plate on it, so I can use one of the very, very small pads to get those little tiny areas. But for right now, this works fine. The pros of this I kind of already mentioned. It's dual action. It's more forgiving. A lot of them react positively to you if you're not holding it right, and they're pretty economically priced if you think about it. So again, the Griot's G9, I just got it last year, used it for the first time, and took my finish to the next level. Just standing back and looking at it, I never got as good a coverage of product on my car by hand as with the machine. It's unbeatable. The other type that you have is known as the Rotary. Okay, the Rotary does not have the dual action. It's just going to spin in one way, and they are much more powerful than these. A lot of people use Rotaries for heavy corrections. So cars that are like really, really bad, they will put a super aggressive pad, sometimes pads like made out of wool, on them, and crank the power up, put it down, and go over the car. So they do require a little bit more finesse, and you really have to be paying attention to what you're doing, because again, if you don't hold it right, you don't get the feedback that you get with this, where if you put too much pressure, or your pad's kind of uneven or something like that, with the pressure that you're putting down, it'll start to slow down, and you'll get kind of pad stall. Rotary won't do that. It'll just keep on burning, right? So you kind of got to be careful. So what's for you? You just have to ask yourself where you're at on the skill level. I would say if you want to get a Rotary, have something to practice on so you can kind of get used to the feel. I recommend that anyways, no matter what. So I practiced with this. I practiced on the trunk deck lid of my daily driver, because if I was going to mess the spot up, I didn't care about that on there, and this thing was great. So I breezed right through it, and it was fine. So if you don't want to do that even on your daily, try to go to a junkyard or you pick it or something and try and get a panel, from there to practice on. So a lot of pro detailers will use only a dual action. So they're good enough. I want to say at Hot August Nights, all of the tools that they have there at the Adams Polishers booth, they're using their dual actions. Theirs are called the swirl killers. So they have swirl killers, 15 millimeter or so, and you can get different types of the dual actions. They come with different throws. So this is a 9 millimeter throw, which is good for, I would say, medium to light corrections. The longer millimeter throw, that means the bigger the action you're going to get from the motor, which means more movement equals more correcting power. So for heavier correction jobs, it makes more sense to go to, say, a 12 millimeter or 15 millimeter, and they even make some that are 21 millimeters, right? So 21 millimeter machine, that's for like, hey, to give you a really big oscillation while this thing is spinning, so you can really correct paint very well. So it's possible to do heavy corrections with a dual action, and you don't always have to have a random orbital, I should say. Rotary. So it just depends. So the 9 millimeter works for me. I may in the future step up to the 15 that Griot's makes, just to give me something that potentially would allow me to work on the car and have to do less passes, because it is a larger throw. So with this one on a particular panel, I may do the customary what they call 4 to 6 passes, which means like once you spread the product around, you go over it 4 to 6 times back and forth. So 1, and then 2, and then 3, 4 to 6. With the longer throw, I may be able to cut that down to 3 or 4. I may be able to just go 1, 2, 3, back, because it has a longer throw. So I'll have to do some more research on that, see if that is a thing, if the longer throw does allow you to do that. But for now, the 9 is great. Like I said, they come with a lifetime warranty, so if something ever starts to happen to this thing, I can always package it up, send it into Griot's, they'll fix it, they'll send it back. They're lightweight. They're very sturdy. You don't have to worry about this thing vibrating like crazy in your hand. It's I've been able to hold it with one hand actually in place and actually work it. So that's the short and skinny, right? So you've got your rotaries and you've got your dual actions. If you want to learn more about this one or any others, hop on YouTube and search the particular product. There's plenty of videos out there of folks going really in depth into these machines. So you can learn more. So hopefully this video was informative for you, and in the next video that I do, I'm going to discuss the different pads, right? So I'll bust out the whiteboard. I'll write down all the different types of pads that there are out there that you can use on these, right? So stay tuned for that, and hopefully you enjoyed this.